Hey everyone, my name is Devin Moreno and I'm a Baltimore City investor. I own 15 properties as of current, and in this YouTube channel I actually film a lot of my start of the beginning of my journey in learning real estate now about 3.5 years ago to now where I'm at. So you're going to see a lot of different types of renovations, and one of them that I did and started out with was called a house hack. So for those of you who don't know, a house hack is where you use a primary residency loan in order to buy an investment property. A lot of people actually confuse a house hack to be a rooming house. A lot of times they'll say, oh, I own a house hack, and they're really saying they own a rooming house, but that's not actually correct. It doesn't have to be a rooming house, and I wanted to show you an example of that. Because while in my first house hack, I did get a rooming house, and you can see a lot of videos where I show that up and how to set up a rooming house and such. In this house here, which is my second house hack, I actually don't live in a rooming house, but it's not a duplex, triplex, or anything like that either. Instead, this is what I call a duplex conversion, which is really a single family home that you end up turning into a duplex. All right. Now, this is actually a little trickier than it sounds. You need a certain type of house to actually do this. And I want to walk you through what my house actually looks like. So you're seeing a little bit of it here, and I'm going to explain kind of the wonky kitchen setup here. But also things I have to consider going forward, and things you should consider if you do one of these duplex conversion style models. So let's go ahead and get into it. I'll go over all the mechanicals, all the numbers on this property, and some things that are some downsides and upsides of doing this. So first off, just to show you a little bit of the outside, kind of getting this into view here, this is actually like it's a house with 2 doors, all right? So that's most important. You need multiple different entrances, because if you want a house hack and subsidize that mortgage or even eliminate it, you're gonna have to rent out the other parts of it. So you need a different entrance to walk in from. A lot of houses are gonna have a back entrance or something like that, or maybe a separate ADU, which is an additional dwelling unit attached to the house with its own separate door. In this case, this house actually almost looks like a duplex kind of from the outside, where it has 2 doors, and you just walk into either one of them as you're coming in. So this is my house. This is where you would actually walk into the door, and here it's you walk in and you would immediately see the kitchen. All right, and you're going to look this way, and you would see there's some stairs going up here, and then if I would go that way, and I'll show you that in a little bit, you're going to see a bedroom. So in this direction, where the house actually meets with my neighbors is actually through that wall. This wall that you see here didn't actually exist before. So before, what existed was an opening where you can get into the kitchen. So I actually built this wall, and that way, when they're in the kitchen, I don't have to see them, hear them, or anything like that. Now, this is a little bit more complicated to do than it sounds, because you're going to have to make it soundproof. Obviously, kitchens are pretty loud, and obviously I want my tenant to be able to play the music they want to play and all of that. So you're going to see as I go upstairs, but I actually double layered the drywall here. I actually put 1 layer of drywall on their side, of course. Then there's insulation on them in between it. Another layer of drywall, insulation, another layer of drywall. So I really padded it to make it really thick, where now I don't hear anything. Even my tenants say they don't hear anything from me. Now, there is some other ways that you can do this maybe a little bit cheaper. If you use acoustic glue and 5/8 thick drywall, you can actually double layer the drywall on top of the drywall itself without that second layer of insulation. It didn't really cost me that much, but if you have a much bigger divide than this small little opening here, then that might save you some money, using some acoustic glue to allow that sound to bounce between the 2 drywalls barriers. And that's actually what you want it to do. You want the sound to kind of get trapped in layers of pocket openings. You're going to see a lot of other strategies to soundproof walls, but this is the one I used. 2 layers of insulation, 3 layers of drywall, and that worked just great. So now I take you into the area. If I were to walk in here, I would have this bathroom right here, and then I have under this staircase is where I actually keep my trash cans. I actually don't use this bathroom, and I'm going to go into it on how I'm going to turn this into an Airbnb and another little creative style to make more money on this property. But essentially, I go into my kitchen. Now, obviously, it's a single family home. This means that there's only 1 kitchen in the house. That's not always technically true. Sometimes there's additional kitchens, but in this particular house, there was no kitchen. So I have this wonky little setup here, but I didn't have to keep it. This just works great for my means because I don't care about cooking. I usually like to go out to eat. So this just works for me. I don't have to worry about it. But if you wanted to build your own kitchen, there's a couple things you're gonna have to worry about, all right? Just think about it in the back of your mind. Number 1, you can't add an additional stove. That's going to sound kind of strange, but as soon as you add another stove, it technically classifies as a second kitchen, which in most counties in the US is going to be illegal because you're only allowed to have one kitchen in a single unit. It's kind of one way they crack down on illegal duplexes and such like that. So to not classify it as a separate kitchen, you want to do like a kitchenette, okay? Just sort of maybe a bar area. You can pretty much add everything, including even a range top. You just can't actually have the oven, which is kind of strange, that limitation, but there you go. So basically what I would end up doing is I can get a stainless steel fridge and I can put cabinets kind of along here. Now, some additional considerations that we're going to think about though. Number one, these windows, they come down pretty far. You're going to notice the way we fix that is to bring the window up artificially. Now, this looks really weird and silly right now, but when I put a granite countertop, which goes up 36 inches, I believe from memory, it's going to go up to that 36-inch mark. It's going to end here. So I don't have to worry about it. It's going to look really normal after that. Now, obviously, bring it up even higher if you want a backsplash or anything like that. Me, personally, I was fine with just like this. All right, and then I can do the same thing here or even eliminate this right here. Let's say I want to make this kitchenette smaller and I don't want this fridge to be right here. I can actually just eliminate the window entirely and put that there, and then, you know, just use your wall cabinets and all of that. There's a lot of design possibilities here. However, there's some electrical and plumbing components that you're gonna have to consider. Number one is, where's your plumbing even coming from? This is where this bathroom here is excellent for me. This little vanity, all right, that you're gonna see here is my plumbing and drain lines, all right? So essentially I can tap off the plumbing, all right? Plumbing uses a pressure-based system, which means that it's pretty easy to just tap off of it and you can get your hot and cold lines right over here. I can put my kitchen sink here easily, maybe here or against a wall, whatever, not a problem. And then as far as drains, obviously drains use gravity, so you're gonna need a way to make sure that you get to that drain. Well, with my vanity being right there, that's not exactly hard. So I can tap off of that, punch through this wall, boom, get my sink. That's not a problem. The next thing you're going to want to think about is some of that electrical component, all right? So the electrical component that you're going to want is outlets. Obviously, stringing up new outlets, you can end up daisy chaining off of existing outlets. We can make them GFCI, like wherever you need the outlets around the water sources. We can move this electrical, all right? Moving electrical is a little bit tricky. Sometimes, a lot of times, the electricians will make it really tight because they want to save on wiring because it's actually pretty expensive. So moving it is, like if I wanted to move this up, let's say, but the electrician ran it from the floor, well, that's going to be a little tough. It's not going to actually go any further up. You'll have to daisy chain off of it and all of this other stuff. But adding those outlets, not a problem. Now, another thing I'm going to end up running into is ventilation. I'm going to have to add that ventilation up here. And then if, you know, let's say I want a stove or anything like that, and I don't want all this cooking stuff to, you know, make the whole area, you know, smelly and whatnot, then yeah, that ventilation. Plus, probably just helps for a good old standard of living anyway. And then one other thing to think about is all of the grease for, like, let's say if I want to add in mini splits in order to cut off the ductwork for this kitchen, those mini splits can't be around stoves, can't be within certain vicinity of stoves. So, and when I say stove, I mean the range top where all of that smoke, of course, would go up. So just some things to keep in mind about how you design your little kitchen space off of a house with only, you know, a single kitchen and such like that. Now, another thing to think about is your panel. Make sure you consider how much electric is actually in your panel that's available, how much amperage. Because if you don't have any more amperage, then you may not be able to add things like that actually need dedicated lines. Often fridges have dedicated 20 amp lines. You don't have to do it, but they often do. Also, if you did want to add another stove, well, that could be another 30 amp line unless you have a gas stove, which I wouldn't here. So I would need another 30 amps in order to power that. So these are little considerations you're going to have to make. All right, so, and generally also, a lot of your electric lines around water sources generally also need their own dedicated lines. So that can be a little tricky with this outlet that I just pointed down here. Now, of course, you don't have to follow these rules and regulations if you choose not to, but just keep it in mind that these are some things you might want to consider. So outside of that, we go around here. We have another bedroom over here where I just kind of keep stuff and storage, and then this window, and that's pretty much it. That's just this small little unit here. Nothing crazy about it. One consideration I'm thinking is with this bedroom over here, I cleared out, and then I can rent this as an Airbnb if I just paint the walls. I'm not really a big fan of the color scheme that the renovator shows here. Remember, I house hacked it, so I didn't renovate this myself. So a lot of this was here when I got it. All right, now, weirdly enough, this is the only area in the house that's actually with this design. All the rest of it was gorgeous. So, all right, perfect. My tenants have that. I don't need to worry about it. But if I want to, I can fix this up real quick and then turn this into a little quick Airbnb. This house is in the DC area. I know I told you I'm a Baltimore investor, but I do invest in the DC area, and this was my first house investing in this area. And then I can Airbnb this. It'll be a hotspot little place. And if I still want to use this later on, I can keep the room upstairs that I haven't shown you yet. We're going to go up there as my own room. Alternatively, I can rent out this entire side. Now, the reason I might not do that is because of Airbnb laws in DC. You may want to check the ones in your own local market. Say I have to live in the house in order for me to use it as an Airbnb. Well, if I live in that room upstairs, well, perfect. Now I'm good to go. All right, if I don't, well, then I can either maybe rent it to a whole other tenant, which, once again, you can't do, all right? So I can Airbnb it, but can't rent it long-term tenant because it's not a duplex, so I can't have two separate leases. Make sure you check your own laws about that. So that's the other little tricky things. It's not like you can just leave out of here and do it the way you want to necessarily. It kind of depends on laws in your local areas. Of course, that's up to you on whether or not you want to even follow them, but just understand that you could get in trouble technically doing it. So I'm going to take you upstairs and I'm going to show you some considerations about the ductwork and some things you really want to pay attention to. So let's go ahead and follow me. All right, so here we are kind of more in a private place in my life, I guess, is my bedroom actually. So essentially here, this is pretty simple. It's just a big wide open room. There are some things though that really sold me on this house as far as using it for a duplex conversion. For example, in most houses, generally you're gonna want one washing machine, one washer, one dryer. Well, in this house is huge. It's a 5-bed, 4-bath house, and it's a lot of square footage. So what they decided to do was give this master bedroom, all right, this larger room, its own washer and dryer. So this is something that really worked in my favor, where I got a washer and dryer right in my own room. So, okay, perfect. Now I don't have to really worry about that, but that's something you want to think about. If you want a second dryer, that's going to take another 30 amps. All right, remember your electric panel can only handle so much. If you have to upgrade your panel, then it's probably going to be a lot harder for you to get done, especially if you want to get permits and stuff involved. So just keep that in mind. This already had this built in. Also, this plumbing for that washer machine is going to be a little tricky as well. Not too much trickier, but getting it from, let's say this didn't exist, I'd technically have to figure out how to get this drain line and plumbing line from another bathroom. Luckily for me, I already have another bathroom. There's actually another bathroom in here, and this is where essentially, you know, they have another double vanity type of situation. This is obviously a master bath meant to look sort of that way. So let's go ahead and show you some of the other design considerations that I had to think about if I wanted to do this whole duplex conversion idea. Number one is the ductwork, okay? This is not something that many of you might think about, but why is this important? Well, there's only one thermostat in the house usually, and my tenants control it, which means I'm at their mercy as far as heating and cooling. Well, not really, actually, because of this. So this is actually a mini split. This thing allows me to control my own temperature and allows me to, you know, let them control their temperature, and I'm perfect. I'm good to go. So there's no ductwork whatsoever in this room. I control my own heating and cooling. I'm solid. All right. And so that's something to think about, is that, you know, you're going to have to make sure who's controlling that heating and cooling. And if it's not your tenants, well, then you got to make that work for them, you know, in that relationship with them. The other thing that you can do is, in the whole Airbnb example, by you controlling the thermostat, let's say I decided to switch this around where I controlled it and the layout happened to work perfectly for that. Well, then I can do an Airbnb, and then essentially for my guests, I just let them know, hey, the temperature's only going to be set at this amount. And then you can give them maybe space heaters or something. Probably not the best idea as far as comfort is concerned. Maybe you can lower your price. Maybe, you know, maybe you're in a hotspot area where that doesn't matter anyway. They're never going to be there. But something to think about. Another thing about the ductwork, however, that you may not be considering is smell. All right. Now, the ducts in the bottom part of my house actually are connected to their side of the house. So in order to, as far as the smells are concerned, every time they cook or do anything, or maybe even smoke weed, it pumps into my side of the house, because obviously it's getting caught in the return vents and getting thrown everywhere. Even despite that, the ductwork creates connection points. Ducts also generate sound, all right? So this is something you have to, well, they carry sound, sorry, not generate, but they carry sound, and so a lot of your conversations can be heard. You may be feeling a little uncomfortable having conversations where your tenants can hear parts of it. So what I did was ended up blocking up all of the duct vents, so not a big deal, kind of. Remember that every single supply vent that you block up is going to create a pressure issue. The ductwork was technically supposed to be perfectly sized to the build and the amount of tonnage it would need in order to push everything around. When you block supply vents, it starts creating pressure issues that break those vents. So that's another thing you're gonna have to think about. It's not as simple as just cut it off. You're gonna need to change out the units and such. When I did that, what ended up happening was they started running out the AC, and it was choking the system. The AC, I guess, was getting kind of caught in the whole thing. It started actually freezing my condensate lines in my unit. So they were dealing with that over and over again. Every time they would try to run the AC, everything started freezing, which of course, freezing creates water, which backlogs into the system and then creates mold, and it becomes an absolute nightmare and disaster. So we ended up getting all this corrected, but what I recommend is, in the case of mine, you separate it out, get an HVAC tech to separate out the ductwork. Then, if you need to, shrink the size of the unit because now it's only feeding half the house. And then if you can, get those mini splits, like I mentioned, in the different parts of the rooms. Remember, you're gonna have to buy a new mini split per room that you're in because they only can actually heat and cool that one room. So this can be tricky if you have more than what I have, which is 3 different rooms. You don't need them in bathrooms, so no worries there, but you do need heat. However, a little wall here should be able to cover that pretty nicely, and it's an easy run since it's just simply an electrical line. But anyway, let me know if you had any questions about this duplex conversion idea. I think it has been awesome. I've loved living here. And this is just a way where you can look for a single family home and you don't have to do a rooming house. There are a lot of other variations. I did do a video on 7 different types of house hacks. There are multiple different types. So you do not have to even stick with this one, all right? And also, as a last thing, always remember your exit strategy, all right? Anyone who watches my videos often talk about it. Your exit strategy is, how are you selling this house, essentially? How are you getting rid of it? Me, it's easy. I blow apart that wall I just created, boom, it's back to a single family home, sell it on the market, not a problem. All right then, well, if you have any questions, comment below, and I'll talk to you all very soon.